And with me is Olive Amoh. And Olive is an occupational psychologist and has been practicing for over 20 years now. Hi, Olive.
Hello, it's good to be here.
Thank you. And today Olive is going to be taking us behind the scenes of an assessment centre. So if you've never experienced assessment centre before, Olive is going to be giving you a bit of background, what they are, what to expect, how to prepare, and all the sort of questions that you might find useful before you attend your assessment centre. So what is an assessment centre, Olive? How is it different from just a normal interview?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that it's a process, it's not a place. Sometimes people get confused that it's an actual place. So it's a process that employers put people through. And one of the key things about it is that it gives people going through an assessment centre multiple opportunities to demonstrate the criteria that the employer is looking for. And so it may feel really daunting if you're going through an assessment centre thinking, oh, they've sent me this information, I've got to do all these things. But I say that that's actually a really good thing as opposed to an interview. When you go for an interview, you've just got one shot at it. You've either done really well, middling, or okay. But with an assessment centre, because you have multiple times to demonstrate the key criteria, if you do an element of it and it doesn't go well, you can just pull it behind you and concentrate on the next thing. So that's one of the reasons why I like an assessment centre. And I'm talking a bit in the abstract. So what I mean by different elements is that an employer may decide that they want to run an assessment centre for, I don't know, someone that's going to be doing an office job. And so they look to see what are some of the key things that would make someone successful in that job. And how are they going to simulate some of the key tasks? And they put that together. So it may be that the person has to do a lot of written communication. And part of that written communication might be writing a response to complaints. So there might be a written exercise around complaints. It may be that they're interacting with people, and one of the things that they've got to deal with are people who are unhappy. So then there might be a role play around people. You've got to interact with someone who's unhappy. And so there'll be multiple criteria that they'll be looking at. So, for example, it might be around the interpersonal skills, the oral communication, the problem solving. So that's one of the things around an assessment centre. They may appear daunting, but to use it as an opportunity for you to go along and demonstrate the key skills that are required as a job.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing, it's a lot fairer perhaps than just a one-to-one interview. Because if you don't have rapport with that one-to-one interviewer, at least you have a chance with the next people or the next group. Yeah.
Definitely. And the other thing is that you're going to meet multiple assessors. To say, if we keep with the office worker example, say for example you do the role play and it's a car crash, you're not going to meet that assessor again. That assessor is not allowed to talk about you to the other assessors. It's independent assessment. So it means that when you go on to your next activity, you meet a brand new assessor and you can start again. Now, with the interview, you've got the interviewer or the interviewers in the room. So that's another reason why I like it. It's that multiple perspective, which is really, really important. And, you know, at the end of the day, what happens is that all the results are pulled together. And then once the assessors have talked about what they have observed being done and the scoring and everything, then you begin to form a picture of that individual. So it's a nice way to build up a picture.
And you mentioned about it being a process and not a place. And at the time that we're actually recording this, we're in sort of like, we're just coming out of lockdown. So have you seen assessment centres being carried out virtually, or do you think they're sort of on hold until everyone able to be in person?
It depends on the client. So a number of clients before lockdown were doing virtual assessments. So you'll find that a number of clients, in terms of interviews, that was done virtually, and it was done without another human being on the other side. So basically, it was pre-recorded questions on video, and you do your response. You're given a certain amount of time, and the next question a certain amount of time as well. So some employers are looking to do way more virtually, and some are looking to do face to face. It really does depend on job and things. But I would say to those listening to this that be prepared. It may be that you end up doing a combination of half and half. So it may be that the first couple of stages are done virtually, and towards the end that they may bring you in. And if they do that, I know that a number of employers are putting in measures in place. So it may be that they bring you in, you've got your own room. As you move into another room, they'll sanitize it. So there's a lot of thinking going behind how can we make these assessment centres safe.
So let's assume you are going to a physical assessment centre, and things are all going well, and there is some interaction with the people going on. Obviously, I mean, I've heard of assessment centres that are half day, a full day. I've heard of a 3-day assessment centre, and the question: how do you keep fresh and keep your stamina up? Is top of my mind when it comes to those.
Yeah, so I guess it's really dependent on the length of the assessment centre. So you're right, they do vary. You can have a half-day assessment centre, and you can have an assessment centre that spans 2 or 3 days. It really does depend on the level of the post. And things. So one of the things that I say to people is that when you go to the assessment centre, it's really important that you look after your mindset. So what I mean by that is that often in terms of the timetable, because there are multiple activities going on, you're not all doing the same activity at the same time. So one of you might go off and do your interview, another one might go off and do a written exercise or a role play or even some psychometrics. And then you'll have someone come back into the main room and go, oh, that role play, that was so difficult.
Yeah, like The Apprentice when they come back and report on their interviews.
But you don't know what they did. They might have said something really outrageous in there, that response. So one of the things is just be mindful about what other candidates are telling you in the room and preserve that space. The other thing is that if you know that you're someone that needs to eat, every 2 or 3 hours, and they've told you it's a whole day assessment centre, normally they will provide you with something to eat. So that's one thing to check. Are they going to provide you with lunch? Even if they're going to provide you with lunch and your diet, you're quite particular about what you eat. Make sure you take snacks that are going to nourish you. So that's another thing about the stamina. The other thing is really basic. Just drink plenty of water, just to keep the mind going as well. And if you're able to move around and get some fresh air, I would do that as well. Those are some of the key things.
Yeah. I'm hearing you on the snacks and things. So for me, that's always have to have a bag of nuts with me just to keep me going emergency wise.
Yeah, because these are things that people forget. And for some places, there may not be any kind of catering facilities. And so
it's coffee and donuts.
Yeah. And if you don't drink coffee, you don't eat donuts, you're there the whole day, lunch arrives and it's sandwiches and you don't do sandwiches, it can get pretty miserable.
Yeah. So we talked about there could be a multitude of exercise. There could be one-to-one interviews, you could have a panel interview, there could be role plays, there could be psychometrics.
There even could be a group interaction.
Yeah, it could also be a written essay or whatever. Are you normally told what you're going to be doing, or is it a surprise when you get there on the day?
So normally what will happen, or should happen, I should say, is that if you are invited to an assessment centre, you should be given some kind of outline of what to expect on the day. So
Mm.
they may say to you, there's going to be some kind of one-to-one interaction. You may need to write a case paper or do a presentation. Sometimes with the presentation topics, they will send that to you in advance for you
Mm.
to prepare. So I would say that if they haven't told you what to expect, is to go back and ask them, okay, what will the assessment centre comprise of? Just to get a feeling of
Okay.
that. Normally, sometimes in their application pack, which candidates do the application, then they forget all about the pack.
Mm.
But sometimes in the pack is very clear that at this next stage at the assessment centre, you're going to do an interview, there's going to be a presentation. So go back to the pack as well.
Yeah. Any tips on preparing apart from going back to the pack?
So
See
one of
what
the
we've got.
things that I would say to someone is to go to the pack and have a look at what they've said, the key competencies, capabilities, criteria are for the post. And similar along the lines of if you're preparing for an interview is think about your experience to date, because your skills are always transferable, and
Mm.
they wouldn't have invited you to the assessment centre process unless they felt that you could do the job. And I think one of the places where I see people kind of fall down is that they don't do proper preparation.
Yeah.
So especially for the interview component, is to sit down and really think about your accomplishments, because when you're sitting in that chair or on the day, those things are not going to come flooding in. You're going to have to have thought about them
Yeah.
beforehand and use those as a resource. The other thing that I would say, actually, when people are there, is do not second guess what an exercise has been designed to test.
Mm.
So they will let you know that we're looking at this test for these reasons in quite a broad term, but don't go into an exercise and think, well, I've got to show this, this, and this, because it skews your behavior.
Yeah.
And the reason I know that is the times when employers have said, we want to give people comprehensive feedback. And I have said to someone, what we were looking for in this particular exercise was X, Y, and Z. Oh, I would normally do that. And it's like, so what stopped you doing it on this occasion? Well, I thought they were looking for someone. It's like, no. But the
Yeah.
other key thing is that when you go to an assessment centre, show up as yourself, because these exercises have been designed for the employer to find out a bit more about you. But it also gives you an opportunity to find out a bit more about the role. If you're doing activities that you don't enjoy, that's giving you an indication that
Mm.
that role may not be suitable for you.
Yeah. That's invaluable feedback actually. If you find the assessment day and the exercises are dragging, then imagine having that job. Yes.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And just some of the things for people to be mindful of, especially if you're in a position that you're going for a job and your organisation is doing restructuring. So you may have some feelings about that. You may be
Mm.
feeling pretty angry. You might be feeling pretty apprehensive about it. But beware of leakage. So what I mean by that is that sometimes you may take out your frustrations on the people who have been brought in to do the assessments. And if you think about it, that's not you showing your best self. So
No.
I'm not saying that you go in there all smiling if you're feeling miserable. There would normally be an assessment centre manager. And you can say to the assessment centre manager, I'm feeling a bit apprehensive, or, I'm just really worried. But what's not really good on your behalf is if an assessor picks you up for your next assessment and they're engaging you in conversation to try and allay your kind of like anxiety, and you're giving them one word answers and you're coming across as pretty short and prickly,
Mm.
because that leaks into whatever you're going to be doing next. They're going to be as independent as possible, but if that's the vibe you're giving off, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah.
And I just want to be clear, in between the different exercises that you do, that's your time, that's your downtime. You're not being spied on, you're not being looked at, you're not being assessed. But think about how you interact with other candidates and how you interact with the people who are doing the assessments.
Yeah, no, that's good advice, isn't it? Because it's very hard to move from one sort of perky, positive mindset and then out again and having a moan about, the employer, and then back into it. Just stay there. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's, and they get it. If it is a restructuring, the people who are doing the assessments have a lot of empathy for you. However, if you show up and you're short with them, you just make it a bit more difficult for yourself. And I have seen it leak, especially if it's a role play, because you've come in with that attitude, you're really fed up, you don't read the brief properly, you go into the exercise, and it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So just think about your mindset, and they know that it's not great for you and things, but don't amplify it.
Yeah, that's good advice. And one thing that actually has struck me listening to you is thinking about that whole interaction with people, especially if you're there for a day. I've noticed doing assessment centres how extroverts seem to, relish it. They get stuck in conversations. At the end of the day, they're swapping phone numbers and they know they're connected on LinkedIn and everything. But the introverts, and I include myself as an introvert, actually do find it quite draining. So, any tips for introverts going through this?
Yeah, so my tip would be is don't feel that you've, everything that's going on and you see the extroverts exchanging numbers, don't feel that you've got to do that. Do what feels right for you on the day. That would be my main thing. And also, if you're allowed to have your electronics with you or whatever, and you've got music that's soothing or something, use the things that help to keep you energized is really what I'm saying. So that means that if you're someone that there's a lunch break and you are able to go outside, sit in the sun and enjoy that, and then come back. Take yourself off. So do what energizes you is what I'm saying, and don't fall into the trap of doing the stuff that doesn't energize you and drains your energy.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I think we've covered everything that I wanted to, but is there anything else that we haven't touched on or that you wanted to say before we wrap up?
The other thing I want to touch on is on the psychometrics. So sometimes you may be invited to do psychometrics. So what I mean by psychometrics is it could be ability or aptitude tests, or it could be personality questionnaires. Normally what will happen is that you'd be sent some kind of leaflet letting you know, giving you the background to it. However, if the people who you're going to the assessment centre haven't sent you that information, but they've mentioned psychometrics, then do go back and find out from them, is it aptitude or is it personality questionnaires? With the aptitude, it's likely to be verbal numerical or some kind of spatial reasoning. So there are places where you can go on the internet. Often a number of test publishers will have practice tests on there. So a test publisher, what I mean is like SHL or the Myers-Briggs company. You can go on their website and they've got practice tests. With the personality questionnaire, there is a temptation to respond to the questionnaire in the way that you think the employer may be looking for someone, and various questionnaires will capture if you haven't answered in a way that's true to yourself. But the overall advice I would give to someone is when you are responding to that questionnaire, the personality questionnaire, do it from the place of you being at work. And also, do not do it from, I think the employer's looking for this type of person. What ought to happen is once you've completed the personality questionnaire, there should be an opportunity for verification of the profile. So what I mean by that is that someone will come back to you and give you feedback.
Yeah.
And that will give you an opportunity to say, well, no, that doesn't feel like me. And here are some examples that I can share with you to demonstrate that. So just be mindful of trying to answer personality questionnaires in the way that you think you ought to answer them, because you're doing a disservice to yourself as well. If there are certain kind of like traits that the employer are looking for, and that's not your comfortable place, if you get that job, you may not enjoy it as much. Yeah. But if you answer it from a place of honesty and it comes through and you say, yeah, I'm aware of that about myself. However, these are things that I do to manage it, and I've been very successful at managing it. That's a better place to come from.
Yeah. Again, I suppose it's like the exercises. If the exercises, aren't lighting your fire, that's showing you that job perhaps not might be right for you. And again, with the personality thing, if they are looking for traits and you're trying to pretend that you have them, again, that's a clue that the job isn't right for you.
Yes.
Yeah. I find personality tests fascinating when you get the feedback. So think of it also as another another way to get some extra feedback about who you are and what things would suit you.
That's it. Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much. And we put your contact details on in the blurb below this. But thank you for your time today, Olive. And good luck to anyone out there doing an assessment centre. And
I wish you well with it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.